It's 7 p.m. Friday, August 9th, here in Seoul.
Coming up on NEWSCENTER tonight. Japanese firms are reportedly drawing up plans to deal with the aftermath of Tokyo's export restrictions against Seoul. And the plan includes finding loopholes to keep shipping materials to South Korea.
Visiting U.S. Defense Chief Mark Esper discusses bilateral military issues with his South Korean counterpart. But contrary to what many have anticipated, not much was revealed about the possible raise of South Korea's defense-sharing costs.
A major reshuffle at the Blue House. President Moon replaces 8 minister-level officials as he pushes to get his policies moving for the second half of his term. We tell you what you need to know.
And hot and humid conditions continue to grip the nation and are expected to carry over to the weekend. Things may start to cool down, however, next week as 2 typhoons make their way to Korea's neighboring countries. NEWSCENTER begins now.
Good evening and welcome to Arirang NEWSCENTER live from Seoul. I'm Han Daeun.
And I'm Noah Adam. Thank you for joining us this evening. We begin at the nation's top office. President Moon Jae-in has carried out a major reshuffle in his cabinet, making ministerial-level changes in around 10 areas.
The Moon administration is trying to get its policies moving as it enters its 3rd year. Our Park Hee-jun starts us off.
President Moon Jae-in has revealed his nominees for some major spots in what will be his new-look cabinet for his 2nd phase in office.
President Moon Jae-in has nominated 8 ministerial-level officials and South Korea's ambassador to the United States. This reshuffle centers on constantly and stably pushing the administration's reform policies forward.
The president named his former chief of staff for civil affairs, Cho Guk, to serve as the new Minister of Justice. The Blue House says that with his knowledge and experience in law and the presidential office, Cho will help push ahead reforms of the prosecution and establish a fair and just legal system. The new chairperson of the Fair Trade Commission will be Cho Sung-wook, a business professor at Seoul National University. She's the first female nominee in the commission's 38-year history. Lee Soo-hyuk will take over as the new ambassador to Washington, replacing Ambassador Cho Yoon-jae. The lawmaker previously worked at Korea's intelligence agency and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Moon Jung-in, special advisor to President Moon for Foreign Affairs and National Security, was also offered the position, but he turned it down. The Blue House says that as an expert in diplomacy, he will contribute to furthering South Korea-U.S. relations and will help resolve various ongoing diplomatic issues. Also advising President Moon on security and foreign policy will be former Unification Minister Chung Se-hyun. He was selected to head up the Presidential Advisory Panel on Unification issues for his decades-long experience on North Korea and inter-Korean relations. This is the administration's first major reshuffle since March, when President Moon replaced 7 ministers. It fills the gap mostly left by those who are running for general elections in April next year. These nominees were selected primarily for their expertise in each respective field, while also taking into account gender and regional balance. Taking up their new positions, they will assist the president in his efforts to create an inclusive nation. But parliamentary hearings still remain, which will test how qualified these nominees are. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
South Korea's rival parties are divided over today's cabinet reshuffle, especially over the nomination of Cho Guk as Justice Minister. The ruling party said he was fit for the job, while the opposition said his nomination is a declaration of war. Or Kim Min-ji at the National Assembly.
The ruling Democratic Party welcomed the cabinet reshuffle, saying the nominees are experts in their respective fields and expressed hope for concrete achievements. As for the nomination of former presidential secretary Cho Guk as Justice Minister, the ruling party says it shows the Moon Jae-in administration's determination to carry out judicial reform. The party also called for cooperation from the opposition bloc to swiftly schedule confirmation hearings and cautioned against unnecessary political strife.
From the point of view of political maneuvering, the opposition can criticize, but the public also have high hopes for the Justice Minister nominee.
The main opposition Liberty Korea party blasted the overall cabinet reshuffle, claiming that it's a move to get the ruling party ready for next year's parliamentary elections. They also criticized the Moon administration for not revamping its diplomatic and security lineup amid mounting security concerns. Regarding the nomination of Cho Guk, the conservatives have long voiced opposition to him due to controversial cabinet screenings when he was presidential secretary.
He failed when it came to his work as the Civil Affairs Secretary. I deeply regret his nomination. This cabinet reshuffle ignores the opposition and is a declaration of war.
Fierce clashes are expected at Cho's confirmation hearing. But it's without a doubt that his appointment will speed up the Moon administration's drive to reform the prosecution. He was behind the blueprint for plans to rebalance the investigative powers of the police and the prosecution and the establishment of an independent body to probe corruption by high-ranking officials. Those two bills are currently pending at the National Assembly. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Japanese companies affected by Japan's trade curbs against South Korea appear to be drawing up measures to cope with the new changes. According to Japanese media, some are looking for ways to go around the new regulations so they can keep shipping materials to South Korea. Our Yoon Jung-min tells us more.
The Japanese firm Morita Chemical Industries said Friday that it will start making ultra-pure hydrogen fluoride in China via a joint venture company to supply Chinese chip makers and Samsung's production lines in China. That's according to an interview Morita gave to the Japanese paper Nihon Keizai Shinbun and the Nikkei Asian Review. Last month, Tokyo tightened its controls on shipments of 3 key materials used for making chips: photoresist, hydrogen fluoride, and fluorinated polyamide. Morita Chemical said it will also ship the material to South Korea if there is demand. Its CEO, Yasuo Morita, told the media that they can ship to South Korea from China instead of Japan if similar problems come between Seoul and Tokyo in the future. Morita also expressed concerns that the export curbs might cause Japanese companies to lose their share in the global market. According to the same Japanese newspaper, another company, Tokyo-Oka Kogyo, which supplies a material called resist, is looking at ramping up its production in South Korea. The company has been also running production lines in Korea and supplying companies here with EUV resists. The newspaper says shipments from production lines overseas are exempt from the curbs, but the Japanese government could tighten the exports of related production equipment or raw materials to South Korea and China. In the meantime, Japan's Mainichi Shinbun said Friday that a Japanese government official admitted that Tokyo had miscalculated the reaction from South Korea to the export curbs, which have stoked anti-Abe sentiment, prompted a boycott of Japanese products, and halted sports and cultural exchanges between the two countries. According to that report, Japan enacted the curbs because it was unhappy with Seoul over the forced labor issue. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Yesterday, South Korea said it would start much tougher inspections of Japanese coal. And today, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said Japan will, in his words, respond appropriately to those measures. But Suga declined to comment further due to lack of details on the stronger inspections. A day earlier, South Korea announced it'll start checking Japanese coal for radioactive materials and heavy metals, Japan being where South Korea gets 99% of its imported coal. Japan's current account surplus shrank in the first half of 2019 compared to a year earlier due to sluggish exports to Asian countries because of the trade tensions in the region. According to a report from Japan's finance ministry, the current account surplus from January to June was down 4% from the previous year to a little under $99 billion. Japan's trade surplus in goods dropped sharply due to a fall in shipments of semiconductor manufacturing equipment and auto parts to South Korea and China. Japan's exports fell by 5% and imports fell by 1%. We know that the U.S. has been trying to mediate between Seoul and Tokyo in their latest dispute. Whatever efforts were made in that direction were less than totally effective, though, seeing as Japan went ahead and took South Korea off its list of trusted trading partners. So the question is, will the U.S. keep trying to help its allies work things out? Or EG1 asks some experts.
The US expressed concerns over the ongoing dispute between South Korea and Japan, stressing that the two sides need to talk in order to solve the problem, while offering to play a role to help resolve the issue.
After the trilateral foreign ministers meeting with her US and Japanese counterparts in Thailand earlier this month, Minister Kang made it known that Washington is willing to mediate between the two sides. However, experts doubt that there's much Washington can do or would actively try to do.
The Obama administration tried to use trilateral cooperation between Seoul, Washington and Tokyo to pressure Beijing. But President Trump is different. He directly pressures China through bilateral issues like the trade war. Thus, Trump doesn't see that maintaining good trilateral ties has a direct benefit for the US, and thus will not play an active role between America's two Asian allies.
It'll be hard for Trump himself to play an active role in the dispute because they are doing the same to China, citing security issues to impose trade restrictions. Plus, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe hasn't asked the US for help.
The U.S., before Japan took South Korea off its white list of trading partners, had proposed a standstill agreement to prevent the conflict from growing and to allow talks to happen. But Japan rejected the proposal, causing the U.S. to lose face and giving it another reason not to intervene, according to Professor Kim. Still, the experts think that there could be a lower level of mediation from the U.S., including from officials more interested in foreign affairs, to prevent the collapse of the trilateral cooperation.
South Korea's possible termination of the Seoul-Tokyo Military Information Sharing Pact could shift the traditional relationship the US has had with its allies. That would mean the decoupling of the Seoul-Washington and Washington-Tokyo alliances, which would limit US pressure on China.
Kim, however, also warned that South Korea should not play this card further because it could portray a threatening or negative image to the US. Professor Hosaka added, amid the risk to the global supply chain and concerns among U.S. technology-related industries, there will be some sort of a mediation from Washington. However, he added that it's more important for Seoul to appeal to the international community than to simply win Washington's support in pressuring Tokyo. 이지원, Arirang News.
Japanese civic groups are demanding that an international art festival in Japan brings back a statue representing the victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery, known as comfort women. Japanese netizens are also getting involved, demanding that the statue be brought back. Kan Young-woo reports.
Last weekend, orders from government officials and alleged threats had prompted one of Japan's biggest art festivals, the Aichi Triennale, to remove the so-called Comfort Women statue made by a Korean artist. Japan's Association of Art Critics said its removal violates freedom of expression, which is one of the fundamentals of democracy. The group added that artistic expression should not be restrained by force and called for the exhibition to be reopened. The Consumers Union of Japan also released a statement saying the removal of the statue is very regrettable and upsetting and violates people's right to know. Local residents submitted a request to the governor of Aichi Prefecture, who is the head of the art festival's organizing committee, asking that the statue be brought back.
About the Comfort Women statue, I am very sad. The display of that statue gave me a lot of expectations and hope for Japan, so I am saddened by what's happened.
Meanwhile, there's a movement spreading among Japanese citizens online where people are posting pictures of miniature comfort women statues in different places. The campaign was actually started earlier this year by a local civic group. The group says the campaign is meant to show that Japanese people are not like their government, which denies its war crimes, including sexual slavery. When the Comfort Women statue exhibition was taken down last weekend, the organizers explained that the decision was based on safety issues because they were receiving terror threats by telephone and email. Kan Young-woo, Arirang News.
Thousands of demonstrators have been staging rallies here in South Korea over the past few weeks, slamming Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe for his trade measures against Korea. And now it looks like a smaller yet determined wave of discontent is rising in Japan as well. Won Jung-hwan has more.
A group of Japanese protesters gathered near the Prime Minister's office on Thursday, urging Shinzo Abe to immediately stop Japan's export curbs on South Korea. They waved banners reading "No Abe" and a photo of a statue representing the victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery, which was recently ordered by Japanese officials to be removed from a global art festivals taking place in the country.
We are furious about what the Abe administration is doing right now.
Protesters says the tightened exports of key materials to South Korea and Seoul's recent removal from a whitelist of trusted export destinations was a move by Abe to retaliate over compensation for Japan's wartime forced labor of Koreans.
The move seems to be retaliation against South Korea's ruling on wartime forced labor.
They also voiced concern that the export curbs against South Korea will only create economic instability in both countries, eventually coming back to bite Japan.
Both South Korea and Japan will be hurt. This is not good for Japan or for companies here.
Some said the retaliation against South Korea could be driven by fear what Abe saw in its neighbor, with the current South Korean administration achieving democratic reform through what's famously known as the Candlelight Revolution, which unseated South Korea's former corrupt president. Thursday's anti-Abe protest wasn't the first in Japan. A few days ago, roughly 200 demonstrators gathered near Tokyo's crowded Shinjuku station to condemn the export restrictions and to support the anti-Abe protests held in Seoul. As relations between Seoul and Tokyo continue to deteriorate due to Abe's retaliation against South Korea, it has fueled anti-Abe sentiment in Japan among those unhappy with the Prime Minister's treatment of South Korea. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
Turning to some economy-related news now, and the OECD's monthly report on composite leading indicators, which was released Thursday local time, points to slowing growth momentum among the world's advanced economies. Kim Hye-sung reports.
The OECD's leading indicators suggest the world's developed economies are set for a slowdown. The composite leading indicators for OECD member countries, which are used to predict turning points in economic activity 6 to 9 months ahead, fell to 99.06 for June, down 0.04 points from the previous month. A reading below 100 indicates economic conditions are likely to worsen, and the OECD member countries' overall CLI has continued to decline since January 2018. The composite leading indicators for the U.S. fell for the 14th consecutive month, recording 98.8 for June. The U.S. has been enjoying the longest economic expansion in decades, but there are growing concerns that the escalating U.S.-China trade war will dampen its growth. Japan and Germany also saw their leading indicators drop on month. Germany in particular saw its June industrial production fall by more than 5% on year, making it the biggest annual decline in almost a decade. The European Central Bank also noted Thursday local time that prolonged global trade tensions and the risk of a no-deal Brexit weigh on the Eurozone's growth, and its composite leading indicators fell to 99 for June. South Korea, which is heavily reliant on exports and global trade, saw its leading indicators for June fall for the 25th consecutive month, recording 98.8. The last time the leading indicators for Korea fell for so long was 20 months from September 1999 to April 2001. China's leading indicators went up slightly by 0.1 points on month to 98.9 for June. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
Global ratings agency Fitch has kept its credit rating for South Korea at AA-. The country has managed to maintain the agency's fourth highest rating for the 7th year in a row, despite geopolitical risks. Fitch cited robust external finances, steady macroeconomic performance and sound fiscal management as the reasons. But due to the worsening exports and facility investment for semiconductors, Fitch's report says South Korea will see slower economic growth of 2% this year. U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper has discussed bilateral security issues with his South Korean counterpart, Chung Kyung-do. They touched upon the issues of North Korea and transfer of wartime operational control, but the highly anticipated issue of defense sharing costs was not brought to the table. Kim Ji-yeon has more on today's talks.
Visiting U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper reaffirmed that the South Korea-U.S. alliance is ironclad and serves as the linchpin of peace and security both on the Korean Peninsula and in Northeast Asia. He said that the two countries share the same vision of a peaceful Korean Peninsula as well as a free, open Indo-Pacific region. Esper added that Washington is willing to engage diplomatically with Pyongyang to make progress on all the commitments made in the Singapore joint statement to achieve the denuclearization of North Korea.
Together with our allies from around the region, we will remain resolute in our enforcement of the United Nations Security Council resolutions until the North engages in complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
Esper also wanted to acknowledge the progress made towards the conditions-based transition of the wartime operational control of the Combined Forces Command from a U.S. commander to a South Korean commander. He said this shows the strength and trust between the allies that no adversaries can match. The two countries kicked off a preliminary session on Monday in the run-up to their summertime command post combined exercise, meant to test South Korea's initial operational capability, or IOC, for the envisioned OPCON transfer. Seoul's defense ministry said the two sides agreed to continue discussing the results of the IOC run-through at the security consultative meeting held later this year. Meanwhile, Chung said Esper's visit is meaningful regarding the security situation South Korea currently faces, citing the entry of Chinese and Russian aircrafts into South Korea's air defense identification zone, as well as a Russian aircraft trespassing into South Korean airspace.
Chung also says the series of short-range ballistic missiles launched by North Korea are not helping easing military tensions on the peninsula, and says Tokyo's economic retaliatory measures are hurting the three-way security posture of South Korea, U.S., and Japan. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
South Korea has called on the North to begin the operation of the Inter-Korean Military Committee as soon as possible. At a press briefing earlier today, Seoul's Unification Ministry said the joint body, which was agreed to be formed at the Inter-Korean Summit last September, should start running quickly to build military confidence between the two Koreas. This comes after the North's Reunification Committee issued an official statement on Thursday for the first time in 3 months, slamming South Korea for raising tensions on the Korean peninsula. It blames Seoul for conducting joint exercises with the U.S., calling them, quote, aggressive war rehearsals, and for adopting high-tech weapons despite their agreement to lower tensions. North Korea state media says the regime's rubber-stamp parliament will be meeting later this month for a second time in a year, which observers say is rare. The most recent meeting was back in April. In that meeting, the Supreme People's Assembly re-elected Kim Jong-un as the regime's leader and representative, replaced the cabinet and revised the constitution. The upcoming meeting could be meant to deal with North Korea's 5-year economic plan due next year and its foreign policy goals, including its denuclearization talks with the U.S. Even though autumn has begun according to the lunar calendar, South Korea has been experiencing steaming conditions in the past couple of days. The sizzling heat is expected to continue over the weekend. But with 2 typhoons on their way towards neighboring countries, there could be a change in the weather next week. Kim Mo-kyun has more.
The weather in South Korea has been baking hot over the past few days, with heatwave warnings issued in many parts of the country. The capital's Seoul has seen its daytime high peak at 35 degrees Celsius on Friday, up 2 degrees from the previous day. Korean Meteorological Administration says the steaming conditions are caused by hot and humid air coming in due to high pressure in the North Pacific. The sweltering heat is forecast to continue over the weekend, with highs lingering around the mid to high 30 degrees range.
Warm air is piling up, and there will be many areas experiencing intense heat until the weekend. Saturday will be extremely hot, with daytime temperatures for most inland areas surpassing 35 degrees.
South Korea's Prime Minister Lee Na-kyun visited vegetable and livestock farms in Gyeonggi-do province for an on-site inspection on Friday to check on how the nation is dealing with extreme heat. He held inspections on whether the cooling facilities are operating normally and on whether the Situation Room for Agricultural Disasters is coming up with necessary measures. However, these steamy conditions could possibly cool down a bit by Monday as 2 powerful typhoons are approaching South Korea's neighbors. The weather agency says the season's 9th typhoon Lekima is moving fast over the seas northeast of Taipei and is expected to reach China's Shanghai by Saturday and even Qingdao by Sunday. Another typhoon named Korea is also heading north towards Japan from Guam. Though its route is unclear because of its slow speed, weather experts from Korea, Japan, and the United States expect Typhoon Korea to move toward the Japanese city of Osaka over the weekend. South Korea's weather agency says it's too early to predict whether the typhoons will affect Korea, but since they're forecast to pass near neighboring countries, precautions should still be taken. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
South Korean golfer Ko Jin-young, who's climbed to the top of the world rankings with 2 big wins this year, is playing here in Korea at the 2019 Jeju Masters. It's the first tournament in this year's KLPGA Tour, and Ko will be looking for her 10th Korean Tour win. Our Hong-yu has this report.
The current world #1 female golfer is South Korea's Ko Jin-young. After a year playing in major tournaments around the world, she is back where she picked up a golf club for the very first time. Ko had the chance to meet with young athletes that dream of becoming a golfer just like her. She said looking at them reminds her of the day she used to practice on that same driving range as a little girl. Just 2 years after her LPGA debut, Ko Jin-young is at the top of the official money list, the scoring average, the Rolex Player of the Year list, and more. This time, she is playing for her 10th victory in the Korea Ladies Professional Golf Association Tour at the Jeju Samdasu Masters. Another Korean golf sensation, 19-time LPGA Tour event winner Park In-bi, says that she is proud of Ko's success and that these are Ko's glory days. She added that Ko's shots are very precise and her play overall is perfect. As well as Park In-bi and Ko Jin-young, other top Korean golfers like Choi Hae-jin and Cho Jung-min are also competing at the Jeju Samdasu Masters tournament, which began on Friday. At the end of round 1, Lee Jung-min is in the lead with a score of 8 under par. The tournament, which is the first on this year's KLPGA circuit, ends on Sunday. Hong-yu, Arirang News.
It's the summer vacation season when people flock to different parts of the country to cool off. And if you haven't decided where to go this weekend, this report might give you an idea. Our Lee Min-sun introduces a tomato festival held in Gangwon-do province that kicked off today.
Tomatoes are not just healthy, but they can also be fun. At the annual Dunne Highland Tomato Festival, you can squash and trample all the tomatoes you want. The main event of the festival is the giant tomato pool, which has been doubled in size for this year's festival. People of all ages can enjoy the unique experience of playing in the tomato pool and getting covered in tomato juices. The organizers have hidden 30 golden rings in this pool of tomatoes to make the event even more exciting. Any visitor who is lucky enough to find one of the rings will get to take it home with them.
Our family came to Gangwon-do province for a vacation and heard about this festival. It was fun playing in the tomato pool and we all enjoyed it. Too bad that I didn't get to find a golden ring though.
Organizers used 30 tons of scratched tomatoes and cherry tomatoes for the event. Along with the pool and water slides, some 50 activities are on offer, including catching catfish, playing with soap bubbles, and tomato picking. The festival has been held every August since 2012 to promote local tomatoes grown in the highlands of Hwaengsong, Gangwon-do province. The wide daily temperature range in the highland areas makes tomatoes much sweeter, denser, and longer lasting. Over 100,000 people attended the event last year, including some 3,000 foreigners. The 8th Dunne Highland Tomato Festival runs through Sunday. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News, Hwaengsong.
The third hiking trail along the DMZ will open to the public tomorrow in the border town of Paju. The 20-kilometer course will start and end at Imjingak Pavilion, passing the Torasan Observatory and a demolished guard post. A ceremony was held earlier today at Torasan Station ahead of the opening, which was attended by provincial and government officials. Unification Minister Kim Yeon-chol said he hopes the trail will help promote peace as well as create new jobs and revive the regional economy. Samsung Electronics took the biggest share of the global DRAM market in the second quarter, despite an overall drop in demand. According to global market researcher DRAM Exchange, Samsung posted just under $7 billion in sales, taking around 46% of the market. Its share actually went up 3 percentage points despite a slight decline in sales compared to the quarter before. Overall, global DRAM market revenue fell by more than 9% on quarter. Germany is worried the current Seoul-Tokyo tensions will negatively affect German companies. According to the Association of German Chambers of Industry and Commerce on Thursday, Japan's trade restrictions could affect German firms that rely on semiconductor goods from South Korea. They risk losing billions of dollars if the trade spat continues. The association added the German economy has already been impacted by the trade war between the US and China. The city of Seoul has opened 5 newly planted forests along the Han River. The city government says the so-called nature forests will give visitors an eco-friendly way to take shelter from the heat and serve as a buffer from the fine dust and traffic. The Hangang River Forest Development Project started around 4 years ago. Since then, the city planted nearly 12,000 trees near riverside parks. That has been your 3-minute news flash.
This could be the hottest weekend of the year, with temperatures expected to soar past 35 degrees Celsius.
It certainly is very hot. Let's get more on the weather from our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Hi guys, now related health and safe ministries are urging the public to take all adequate measures to endure sizzling temperatures as nearly the entire nation is under heat wave warnings. The current heat wave could come to a sizzling peak, coinciding with sporadic showers and thunderstorms in parts of Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces tomorrow. In the meantime, the rest of the nation will be mostly under sunny skies on Saturday. And the capital and the rest of the nation will have a hotter start of the day, with Seoul, Daejeon, and Busan and Jeju kicking off Saturday morning with 26 degrees Celsius. And brace yourselves for another scorching afternoon tomorrow, especially if you are in the capital, as the mercury is expected to soar up to 37 degrees Celsius. And conversely, the southern regions are looking more bearable with highs in the low 30s. And meanwhile, Typhoon Lakima is heading northwards, and according to the forecast, it will indirectly affect the nation by bringing rain on Jeju Island tomorrow and to the rest of the nation by Monday. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That will wrap it up for this edition of Arirang News. Thank you, as always, for watching.
News in Depth is next.